Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. This morning, the National Democratic Congress, as usual, we are pleased to be with you for our weekly press conference. This morning, we'll be streaming live. The link is on Facebook. And in an attempt to lift our game, we too will be recording, and we're going to ask you, when it's question time, to use the microphone, state your name and organization, and ask your questions. That way, we'll be able to have everything recorded. Thank you very much, and we now welcome our party leader, Senator Nazim Burke.
Thank you very much, Vincent, and let me say good morning to you, members of the media, and thank you for coming out this morning. We wish to spend some time this morning talking a little bit about this issue surrounding Charles Liu and the United DMI Group, UDG, as it is known, the implications for Grenada, and to talk about some of the things which we as a party, as a political party, believe the government ought to be addressing at this particular point in time. We know that this issue has been spoken about for much of the week, the last week, and there are those who may be saying, well, it is time for it to go on. We want to make it clear, however, that this issue is so significant, so important, that not ignore it. We must continue to speak to it and to address it until such time as the government addresses the fundamental questions and challenges surrounding this particular incident. We are especially convinced that this is the correct way to go in light of the repeated statements by government ministers. We've heard now Minister Joseph, we've heard Sheldon Scott, we've heard Minister Steele, each and every one trying to suggest somehow that this is just a breeze that's blowing over. There's no problem. As a matter of fact, this has nothing to do with Grenada. We want to encourage you to look at this issue a little closer as members of the media, because you will realize as you look at the situation that this in fact has everything to do with Grenada. And at the end of this press conference, we will present you with a summary that we have put together of this case and all of the information that we now have, not speculation and hearsay, but the facts as we know it and as we understand it. We will share those with you. At this particular point, we will let you know what is happening. And I want to tell you that in this. Sorry about that, members of the media. Just my phone interrupted me here. So I was saying, at the end of this session, we will present you with a summary of the case that has been made out or presented against Mr. Charles Liu and the United DMI Group, the implications of that for Grenada, and some of the demands that we as a political party are asking the government to, or demanding of it, making of the government in this particular case. And we said that we wanted to do this especially because of the claims by some government ministers that this has nothing to do with Grenada. The first thing I want to say in relation to that is that it has everything to do with Grenada, and in that regard, I want to encourage you, members of the media, to take a look at the complaints that was released, that was unsealed by the Security and Exchange Commission on the 2nd of June 2016 in Los Angeles, California. You will see that at paragraph 51 of that complaint, at page 11, the complaint alleges that Mr. Liu retained at least 3 China-based marketing firms to solicit investors in China to do the project in America. The names of these 3 companies were presented at page 11, paragraph 51, as Overseas Chinese Immigration Consulting Limited, that's one. That one is based in Hong Kong. United Deme Group, a company that is supposed to be setting up the business, doing the project at Mount Hackman. United Deme Group, one. United Deme Investment Company Limited. That is a company, as you will see later on, that the government has given international marketing agency rights or privileges to market Grenada's Citizenship by Investment Program. I will show you in a minute that this company was one of Grenada's international marketing agents. That's the United Deme Investment Company Limited. So United Deme Group is the one that is building or developing the project at Mount Hackman. United Deme Investment Company is the one who is marketing our passports abroad under the Citizenship by Investment Program. And these companies, and Beijing Pacific Deme Consulting Company, these companies, all 3 together, is what the United States is calling UDG, or the United Deme Group, collectively. So I want to refer you to paragraph 51, page 11 of the complaint that was filed by the United States. And when we look at the information that is available, again, even by the government, the project that is called the Grenada Resorts Complex Project, and you will see that in paragraph 16 of the document that I share with you. The Grenada Resorts Complex Project is being developed by a Chinese company called United Deme Group, also referred to as UDG, spearheaded by Mr. Charles Liu, the same person. I want to point you also to the fact that the government's website promoting the Citizenship by Investment Program, that is info@grenadacbi.org, lists the Grenada Resort Complex project as an approved project under the CBI. By a notice that was published in the Government Gazette of June the 5th, and this, again, you can find, it's very easy to locate, the Government Gazette of June the 5th. This notice, you will see, confirmed that on the 26th of May 2015, the United Deme Investment Company Limited, a member of the Deme or the United Deme Group of companies, was appointed as an international marketing agent of Grenada under the CBI. When you go to the government's website, the Government of Grenada's CBI website, that is www.cbi.gov.gd/Grenada-citizenship/marketing-agents, where the Grenada's authorized international marketing agents are listed, we see that in listing the United Deme Investment Company Limited as one of Grenada's international marketing agents, the contact person for that particular company, or the email, I should say, for the contact person of that company is Lisa Wong at UnitedDeme.com. Lisa Wong is the wife of Charles Liu. I want to point your attention also to a document, a media release, dated the 17th of February 2015, from a company called Incentive Travel and Conventions Meetings of China, that's IT and CM China, in which in that release, they refer to one Mr. Leo Kin, Q-I-N, Mr. Leo Kin, as the marketing supervisor of the United Deme Group. He says he was representing Grenada, and he spoke about the benefits and opportunities for Chinese citizens wishing to do business or to visit Grenada. In that release, the following information is provided about the United Deme Group, and I'll quote you a little bit of it. and you'll see that in the documents we will give you. United Demi Investment Company Limited is a consulting service company specialized in American and Grenada investment immigration. America and Grenada investment immigration, medical overseas, and real estate overseas service. Medical overseas, again, dealing here with the, of course, you know, the proton was a medical service, the proton service. It goes on to say, United Demi develops high-tech medical projects, and we have an experienced professional team with its own complete system. United Demi provided professional consulting service with credibility, profession, efficiency, and quality for customers. It goes on to say this. The headquarters is located in Beijing. There are branches located in Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Qingdao. Its service network will be spread all over the country. And the final sentence of this quotation says this. Additionally, there is a representative office in Los Angeles, California. The American team will accept all the businesses from China. That is to say, whatever business is going on with this Grenada operation and the American operation, the American branch of the company, the American office will collect the monies for all the businesses that are doing business from China. So it is clear that for the Grenada project, whatever monies are supposed to be collected by investments, assuming that this statement is perfectly right, and we have no reason to question it, because the person known as Mr. Liu Qin is presenting himself as the marketing supervisor of the United Demi Group. But the quotation says that the American team will collect the monies for any projects that are happening in America and in Grenada. So there can be absolutely no doubt whatsoever that these two projects are totally intertwined, and whatever funds are being collected are being commingled one between the other. So this is extremely important. Now, when you look at the complaint of the Security and Exchange Commission, and I think you have copies of that, I'm sure you would have seen them, at paragraph 86 of that document, page 17, the complaint says this, I'm quoting, Liu also transferred $11,845,000 to the three marketing firms in China, and in brackets, overseas Chinese, UDG, and desks, from the accounts where investor proceeds were deposited. Yes? So again, it is clear, looking at paragraph 86 of the complaint, that the monies that were collected from the Chinese investors, Mr. Liu transferred $11,845,000 US into these three marketing firms. The complaint goes on in the following paragraph to say that this is, paragraph 96 at page 19 of the document, the complaint from the Security and Exchange Commission. It goes on to say that of this $11,845,000, the United Demi Group, the company developing Mount Hackman project in Grenada, I'm quoting here now, was paid a total of $3,815,000, the vast majority of which came from capital contributions to recruit 10 investors. All of these monies were paid to International and Commercial Bank of China in Hong Kong. So again, we're seeing monies being taken from the Chinese and being transferred into personal bank accounts and companies owned or associated with Mr. Liu. So this is a very serious situation. The United States has gone on to freeze the assets of Mr. Liu, and we want to make it absolutely clear that this act itself, the very fact of these charges being brought with the Security and Exchange Commission of the United States calling for a freezing of assets and alleging fraud on the part of Mr. Liu, a member, a citizen of Grenada under the Citizenship by Investment Program, his company, the United Demi Investment Company Limited, one of the international marketing agents of Grenada under the CBI program. We believe that steps must be taken to distance ourselves and dissociate ourselves from this relationship. Recently, a husband and wife couple in St. Kitts, the Kaplan family, were engaged in very similar activity or were charged with very similar offences by the Security and Exchange Commission. This happened as recently as May 31st in St. Kitts, and the very first thing that the Kittian government did was to revoke the citizenship. The very first step that they took. So in this particular case, we are calling on the government of Grenada to immediately revoke the Grenadian citizenship of Mr. Charles Liu that was granted to him under the Citizenship Divestment Program. This is the very first demand that we're making of the government. We've said it before, and we will continue to call for it. We call on the government of Grenada to immediately revoke the Grenadian citizenship of Mr. Charles Liu granted to him under the Citizenship Divestment Program. We call on the government of Grenada to immediately revoke the appointment of United Dema Investment Company Limited as an authorized international marketing agent of Grenada under the Citizenship Divestment Program. It must also be noted, ladies and gentlemen, that the Citizenship Divestment Program of Grenada continues to operate under a cloud of secrecy, despite the clear and unmistakable requirement of the Citizenship Divestment Act of 2013, in section 15 of that act, that the minister responsible for the program, in this case, the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Mitchell, must file a report every 6 months with the Parliament on the operation of the program. To date, Dr. Mitchell has bluntly refused to obey the law and to file those reports. In the 2 years that this program has been running, not a single report has been filed by Dr. Mitchell to the Parliament in respect of the operations of the Citizenship Divestment Program. When he came into office, he would have taken an oath that says that he would respect and obey the laws of Grenada. That is clearly not happening. And it is an outrage for this to continue in the face of calls by the Prime Minister at the same time to amend the constitution of the country. A mockery is being made of our laws. We are calling on the government further to initiate a full-scale investigation into the operations of the Citizenship Divestment Program. This investigation should examine, among other things, the circumstances under which Charles Liu could have been granted citizenship under the Citizenship Divestment Program, and the conditions and circumstances under which the United Dema Investment Company will have been appointed an authorized international marketing agent of Grenada under the CBI. These two things have happened in the face of some of the most questionable conduct. There are reports that these two persons may not have gone through. These two applications may not have gone through the normal channels. We are not able to confirm or deny that report, but we are told that these two applications may not have gone through the normal channels, and that what should have happened did not happen in this case. As a result, we are calling on the government to initiate a full-scale investigation into this particular circumstance. Of course, we cannot ask the government to investigate itself. We cannot ask the members of the Citizenship Divestment Program to investigate itself. We cannot ask the cabinet to investigate itself. And therefore, what we will do is call upon the government to make this an independent investigation. An investigation led and conducted by any eminent Caribbean jurist, somebody who knows the law, understands the principles that are involved, and is impartial, have no axe to grind, is not looking to support NDC, is not looking to support the business community, is not looking to support the trade unions, is not looking to support the NGO community or the churches, is just looking to see what went wrong. And so we believe that, and we call on the government to initiate a full-scale investigation into the operations of the CBI. We also call upon the government to suspend the operations of the CBI program pending this investigation. Too much is at stake. As we have said before, and we repeat today, the CBI program poses two very serious risks for Grenada. One of them is a security risk, and we've spoken about that, and we'll speak about it again on other occasions, I'm sure. The second one is the reputational risk. The risk that if this were to continue, and these questionable arrangements and cloud of suspicion and secrecy and fraudulent behavior surrounds and envelopes this program, then it can have very negative consequences for our economy. The accountants who depend on it for business will be affected. The lawyers who depend on it for business will be affected. The investments that the government is depending on to create jobs will be affected. Overall, our reputation as a country will be negatively impacted, and Grenada can once again be seen as a rogue state. We must never forget that this is not the first time that Grenada has introduced a citizenship by investment program. The first one was called the Economic Citizenship Program, and that program had to be terminated in 2001 under very questionable circumstances. The government was forced to repeal that law. Before it all happened, there was embarrassment. In one instance, some Chinese officials were apprehended at the airport in Canada, carrying Grenadian passports, and raised a number of questions as to the circumstances under which they were operating. I believe also, and we call on Dr. Mitchell to step down as the minister responsible for citizenship pending the outcome of that investigation. As the minister responsible for citizenship, this problem must be put squarely into his lap. He has no one else to blame. He is the person that is responsible. I mentioned earlier that he is refusing, for whatever reason, unexplained reason, he is refusing to file the reports to the parliament. The lawmaking body of the country, the supreme institution of our country, the highest making institution in our country, he is refusing to obey the parliament's order that a report be filed every 6 months in respect of the citizenship by investment program. So we cannot expect him now, if he's not obeying the law, we cannot expect him to conduct a genuine, independent investigation into what is going on here. And therefore, we believe that the right thing to do is for Dr. Mitchell to step down as the minister responsible for citizenship, pending the outcome of that investigation to which we refer. We also say that it is extremely important that the government take steps to protect the assets of those investors who may have been compromised by what is going on with this case. We have seen the numbers. We have no reason to doubt what the Security and Exchange Commission is saying. Of course, there are charges, and at this stage, the case is yet to be tried. But the court was sufficient, the court in the United States was sufficiently convinced that this is a case in which it must take no chances and it must freeze the assets until the case itself is finally heard, so as to prevent the depletion of the assets, so that at the end of the day, when the case is heard, there is no money because it is spent by Mr. Liu while the case is going on. That's the mischief that the court is trying to protect. In this particular case, we have seen that the documentation is suggesting clearly that United DMI Group, the company responsible for the development of the project here in Grenada, and the United DMI Investment Company Limited, the company that is given the right to market our passports in China and abroad, are companies that fall within what is known as the UDG Group. And that group represents one of the 3 companies with which Mr. Liu was associated, and into which they pumped $11.8 million of the investors' money. So we are calling upon the government of Grenada, in the interest of all investors, to take immediate steps to freeze the assets and accounts of Mr. Liu, his wife, the United DMI Group, and all other related companies here in Grenada. As I said before, and I repeat today, we are advised that Mr. Liu and his wife and one or more of the related companies are owners of 3 luxury vehicles here in Grenada, 1 Audi, 1 Mercedes-Benz, and 1 Chevy pickup vehicle. We are calling on the authorities to capture these vehicles out of an abundance of caution. We are advised that Mr. Liu and his related companies occupy an office in the GCNA building on Kirani James Boulevard. Again, we are calling on the authorities to execute the search and seizure warrant, to take such other steps as may be necessary to protect the interests of the investors. Now, I mentioned before that on the 26th of May, 2015, our Foreign Minister, the Honorable Clarence Modest Cohen, travel to China. She made to launch the $2 billion project at Mount Hartman. In the course of that launch, which happened on May 26th in China, she was reported in the Caribbean Journal, that is an online travel and tourism magazine. She was reported to have said this, and we must quote it again. I invite all of you here today to make an investment in what will be a partnership that will undoubtedly bring resounding benefits to you, the investor, as well as the citizens of Grenada, Caribbean, and Petit Martinique. End of quote. If that is correct, ladies and gentlemen, this situation can be misconstrued, can be understood in a negative way for Minister Modeste Cohen and the government of Grenada. One is forced to question, or one may question, not us necessarily, but one may question whether or not by making these statements, Minister is not unwittingly putting herself in a position where she can be seen as assisting Mr. Liu in recruiting investors whose monies can end up at risk. And so it's extremely important that the government distances itself from Mr. Liu so as to protect our name, to protect our integrity as a nation, and to protect Grenada's reputation. So this is extremely important. Again, while we level no accusations against the minister, and we are not suggesting that many of them may have engaged in improper behavior, what we are saying here is, if it is necessary for us to determine whether or not any monies may have been contributed by Mr. Liu or his related companies to finance the travel of government ministers, to finance accommodation of government ministers, whether improper gifts were presented to the ministers. I'm not suggesting that the ministers may have taken those gifts or accepted those gifts, but whether or not any of these actions may have been taken are all things that one would need to investigate very carefully. In the wake of the reports that Mr. Liu may have been quite apparently generous with his assistance to others here in Grenada, we call on the Financial Intelligence Unit to initiate an investigation to determine whether any financial crimes may have been committed here in Grenada involving Mr. Liu, his wife Lisa Wong, the United Demai Group, the United Demai Investment Company Limited, or any other related company. And should the authorities decide to do what is right and proper and to proceed with such an investigation, we insist that the present acting director of the FIU, Mr. Tafara Pei, should not be allowed or required to lead or participate in any way in such an investigation, given the fact that as the husband of a government minister, Mr. Pei is a politically exposed person and is hereby prohibited, or is thereby prohibited, from serving as director of the FIU. I want to point out to you that Section 15 of the Financial Intelligence Unit Act, as well as the rules of the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, both prohibit a politically exposed person from working for the FIU of Grenada. I want to further point out that Mr. Liu, according to the published information that we've seen, Mr. Liu holds the office of Grenada's commercial attaché at our embassy in China. This means that Mr. Liu is not only a Grenadian citizen, but in all likelihood is also a Grenadian diplomat and the holder of a Grenadian diplomatic passport. We call on the government of Grenada to immediately revoke Mr. Liu's appointment as the commercial attaché at the Grenada embassy in Beijing. And should Mr. Liu be the holder of a Grenadian diplomatic passport, we call on the government to immediately recall the passport in order to protect our dignity. We call further for a full investigation, a full-scale investigation into the circumstances under which Mr. Charles Liu was appointed commercial attaché at the Grenadian embassy in China, and in particular, whether and to what extent the recommendations of Sir Richard Charlton contained in his report of September 27, 2007, in which the allegations that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell had received a sum of $500,000 in a briefcase from an international criminal in exchange for granting that criminal diplomatic status as a Grenadian ambassador, and whether or not the recommendations that Dr. Cheltenham made in that investigation, in that inquiry, are in fact being followed. I point you to the recommendations that were made. Let me say, first of all, I pointed to the weaknesses that were identified by Dr. Cheltenham. If you look at his report, you will see at pages 76 and 77 of his report, all of the extensive weaknesses that he identified. In fact, 13 different weaknesses that were identified. We have presented those in summary form that you will have those available before you, but you can find them at pages 76 and 77 of his report. And we must ask the question, in light of these weaknesses that were identified and the recommendation that he made, did the government follow these recommendations or similar recommendations in appointing Mr. Liu as commercial attaché in the Grenadian embassy in China? Just to point out that in relation to the recommendations made by Dr. Cheltenham, two of them in particular I want to point out. The first one is, he says, the first recommendation that I'm making, and I'm quoting here from page 78 of his report, is that those who volunteer their services must be excluded. They almost always have an interest of their own to serve, which may well be wholly inconsistent with the best interests of the country. They want the job for their own purpose, not the country's. Yes? And his second recommendation, which appears at pages 79 and 80, had this to say, I'm quoting, all potential candidates should be referred to the police department so that intensive background checks in collaboration with Interpol, the FBI, that is the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States, the same body that would be involved in an investigation of this kind in the United States, may be carried out to verify their bona fides in an effort to ensure that only the highest caliber of persons represent the country. But that due diligence process should not be restricted to the initiatives of the police. Depending on the background of the candidate, it may, for example, be useful to check with the professional body to which he belongs. In addition, Dun and Bradstreet may on occasions be useful as well as local banks. He goes on, the recently established Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU, is connected to a worldwide network of like-minded agencies called the Egmont Group, and inquiries made through the FIU may be useful. So too may inquiries be made through the International Chamber of Commerce. So again, these are recommendations that Dr. Cheltenham made at the time he identified these 13 weaknesses that we have pointed out when he prepared his report of September 27, 2007. Did the government follow these recommendations? Has the government addressed these weaknesses, these 13 weaknesses that were identified? This appointment of Mr. Liu as a commercial attaché and possibly as a diplomat, and the granting of a diplomatic passport to him raises very serious questions as to whether or not the government is doing what it needs to do to protect Grenada's good name. And therefore we call on the government for a full-scale investigation into the circumstances under which Mr. Liu may have been granted a diplomatic passport, the circumstances under which he was appointed commercial attaché, and the circumstances under which he is allowed to sit in our embassy in China. These are extremely important calls. We want to say further that that investigation into the appointment of Mr. Liu as commercial attaché falls squarely in the lap of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Dr. Clarence Modeste Cohen, and we are therefore calling on the Minister, calling on the Prime Minister and the Minister to step down pending the outcome of the investigation into the appointment of Mr. Liu. So these circumstances cannot be allowed to sit. We will share with you, ladies and gentlemen, our summary of what has gone on, what we've been able to determine so far from all the information that we've gathered. We will share with you the implications in writing, the implications for Grenada, and of course we will share with you the demands that we're making of the government of Grenada. I want to make it absolutely clear We have no intention of leaving this issue until the government addresses it. We have not heard from the Prime Minister, the Minister responsible for citizenship. We have not heard from the Foreign Minister, the Minister responsible for the appointment of persons to the diplomatic corps. And the two people that are supposed to be speaking are saying nothing, and you have the rabble-rousers making all kinds of noises in different locations. So the fact of the matter is that this issue is fundamentally important and must be spoken to and addressed at the highest level by the government of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, members of the media. You heard our party leader speaking on the need for action to be taken and listing the actions which the National Democratic Congress calls for. Now, it appears from the statements made by the ministers who have spoken so far, Minister Steele, Minister Joseph, and Sheldon Scott, Senator Scott, it appears that the government is willfully turning a blind eye to the actions of Mr. Liu, Ms. Wang, and their associated companies. It is necessary, as the SEC called for, that a complete accounting of funds received by Mr. Liu, Ms. Wang, and their associated companies, a full accounting be done to ensure that the funds received have not been misappropriated as in the allegation, the complaint made by the SEC. It would be very unfortunate if the government of Grenada facilitates the furtherance of an alleged crime. It will be very unfortunate if our government becomes an accomplice in causing investors to be defrauded. And it is because of the love of our country and our concern for the good name of our country that we are calling for us to wet our house. They say when your neighbor's house is on fire, wet yours. We are calling for the necessary actions to be taken. We now invite your questions. Remember to use the microphone, state your name and your affiliated media house. It's on.
Good morning, Rachel Dean, MTV. Senator Burke, you spoke earlier about the shutting down of the CBI program, right? But my question is that there are other projects under this program, not only this Charles Lee, not only this project. So isn't it that if you shut down the program, these other projects would be affected in terms of the monies that the investors have already spent? Wouldn't that go waste, and wouldn't it also affect the economy in terms of creating employment and stuff like that?
Well, let me say first of all, shutting down the program does not mean scrapping any project that is ongoing. If there are projects and the government has collected people's money, the government has to account for their money. And if the projects are ongoing, the projects have to go on. In other words, we are not suggesting that any rights or privileges that may have been granted previously, or any obligations that the government would have given to anybody, or commitments that the government would have given to everybody, anybody, must be disregarded. We are not suggesting that citizenship that may have been granted must be revoked. We are not saying any of that. In saying that we shut down the program, what we're saying is no new applications should be processed pending the investigation, during the investigation. Because if there are fundamental problems with the system, if the idea really is to prevent this from repeating itself, and if there are fundamental problems with the system, the investigation, it is hoped, will discover those problems and will fix those problems. So you need to know whether there are problems and fix those problems so that when we make the next step, we don't end up repeating this problem. So the idea is not to compromise any arrangements or commitments that are given, or any privilege or rights that may have been granted, or any projects that may have been commenced under this program, but really to ensure that while the investigation takes place, applications are not processed.
Okay. You also spoke about Senator Scott speaking on the issue and Minister Joseph speaking on the issue. So is this a clarion call for Clarice Modest to come out and speak on the issue because we are yet to hear?
Well, yes, what we're saying is we need to hear from the ministers responsible. Of course, it is within the competence of the government to call on any of its ministers to speak on any subject. But there's a cabinet responsibility for certain areas of work and portfolios in different ministers, residing in different ministers. The Minister of Foreign Affairs is the minister who's responsible for the general administration and supervision of our foreign embassies and so abroad. This is an external function, external affairs. So that is the minister, the line minister responsible for embassies and the operations is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The line minister responsible for the operation of the Citizenship and Investment Program is the minister responsible for citizenship, in this case the Prime Minister. And one would expect that if there's a problem in the hospital, if there's a major health problem at the hospital, one would expect that the Minister of Health will step forward to speak on the issue, because that is the person who is assigned the ministerial responsibility. That is the government's spokesperson in a strict sense. That is the person who the government holds out to the public and to the nation, is the person who has the competence, the capacity, the ability, the understanding to guide us in matters of public health and in matters of public health policy. Yeah? Therefore, in the same way, those who have that portfolio, that have that cabinet responsibility, should be the ones really that we should be speaking. We cannot say who should speak for the government, but I'm saying one would expect that the minister responsible will be heard on the subject matters.
You also highlighted that the Prime Minister is supposed to make a report on the CBI program every 6 months, and he is yet to do so. Has he given any reason thus far as to why he hasn't given one?
No, absolutely not. And this is really what we're talking about. You cannot become Prime Minister of Grenada. You cannot take a job as a Minister of Grenada unless you take an oath. That oath is set out in the Constitution. Unless you take an oath that if you're given the job as Minister, you will obey the Constitution and you will obey the laws of Grenada, so help you God. You cannot get that job. Yes? So when you take that oath, you're saying, I'm going to obey the laws of Grenada. And if the law is there, and the minister who is responsible for its implementation is simply flouting the law, disobeying, not explaining, not offering any explanation or excuse, not even a lame duck excuse, no excuse whatsoever. In other words, total contempt for the law and for the citizens of the country, then something is wrong. And that same person is calling now for the reform of the Grenada Constitution and saying, well, I want to reform the Constitution. And then he has his surrogates running around talking about changing the Constitution. But when issues like this arise, they say nothing. When he appointed Minister Gregory Boyd, an engineer by profession, twice as the Attorney General of Grenada, nobody said anything. When he appointed, now that he's passed this an issue like this has come up, affecting the Bar Association, the business community, nobody said anything on this. When these things are happening, those who need to speak up are remaining silent. But then they're running around talking about changing the Constitution. Where are these men of conscience? This is the problem. There are those who don't know better, there are those who don't understand. There are others who understand. And therefore, we must all do what is necessary to protect our country. I'm not pretending that I'm more patriotic than anybody else. But it must be clear to all of us that this is not right for Grenada. And if the Prime Minister has a duty set out in the law, saying that he must file a report to the Parliament, he must file a report. We must know who are the people that have been granted citizenship. How many persons have applied? The law, look at section 15 of the Citizenship and Investment Act. It actually spells out in great detail what is to be done and what is to be said. I want to just suggest to you that once you have a minute, take a look at that law. Yes, this law. It says section 15 says this. Just so that we can share with you very quickly section 15 of the law. It says this. The minister shall, I'm looking at section 15 of the law, yeah? The minister shall, every 6 months on the prescribed dates, prepare a report containing the prescribed information on the applications made, granted and refused under the Act, and shall, as soon as practicable, but no later than 30 days after the completion of the report, cause a copy of the report to be laid before the House of Representatives. The report referred to in section 1 shall set out information as prescribed in subsection 3 for the 6-month period in each year, starting on January 1st and July 1st, and may be prepared within 1 month of the expiry of each half-yearly period. And then it goes on. The information contained in the report referred to in subsection 2 shall include A, the number of applicants made, granted, and refused under the Act; B, the names, addresses, and nationalities of the applicants and any dependents included in the applications; C, the amount of the investments, as the case may be; D, the names of the approved project, government-sponsored project in respect of which payments was made; E, the aggregate amounts of the National Transformation Fund at the date of the report; F, the average amounts of funds received pursuant to section 11 of the Act; and G, such other information as the minister may consider appropriate. This is what the law says must happen every 6 months, 1st of January and 1st of July. This law came into force at the beginning of 2014. We are now halfway through 2016. Not a single report has yet been filed.
My follow-up question, do you see the comments made by Minister Joseph last post-cabinet brief? Do you see that disrespectful towards Canadians?
Which comments specifically are you referring to? I want to be careful that I don't say the wrong thing about comments, yes?
But basically, he was saying that it's like not taking responsibilities. Like America and Grenada are two separate people, and what happens in America basically has nothing to do with it here. So, do you see that those comments as disrespectful?
Well, yeah, I don't want to. Well, it is difficult to judge whether it's an act of disrespect or an act of ignorance. I really don't know which one. Yeah. In other words, either he understands and is disrespectful, or he simply does not understand. And I don't know which one really is happening there. But I think I believe that Minister Joseph is an intelligent man. He is able to apprise himself of the facts and circumstances around this. The information is available. We've put together a document pulling from all of the different sources that are available, which we've shared with you, and you will see in the document where we took the information from. So it's not, I'm not making it up, yeah? So Minister Joseph can equally apprise himself of what are the circumstances. And I think it is clear, if he does read the stuff, it is clear to all that the United Dema Group, the United Dema Investment Company Limited, both companies involved in Grenada, one as the developer of the Manhattan project, the other as an international marketing agent under our Citizenship and Investment Program, are companies that received up to $3.8 million, according to the allegations from the United States Security and Exchange Commission. Up to $3.8 million US of investors' monies went to those companies. Yes? So it is reasonable to question, and it is a legitimate and serious question, whether the money that are being paid to those two companies are being used here in Grenada to finance the operations in Grenada. It's a reasonable question. And so I have to conclude that Minister Joseph has to take a second look at his position on this. His position is clearly misinformed, misguided, or deliberately deceitful. I don't know which one. I don't want to prejudge it. I will give him the benefit of the doubt and simply say Minister Joseph needs to take a closer look at the circumstances surrounding the streets. I do believe in my heart that if he does look at this carefully, honestly, and objectively, he will also come to the conclusion that there is a problem here and that the government needs to take action to protect itself, to protect its ministers, to protect its officials, and to protect the good name of our country.
Thank you very much.
Any additional questions? No? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to having you back on Monday coming at 11 o'clock when we will have our usual weekly press conference. Thanks again.